Have you ever found yourself desperately trying to hold on to something, a relationship, a job, a version of your life, even when you knew deep down it was slipping through your fingers? That tension, that resistance to change, is something we all recognize. It's human nature to crave control, to want the world to bend to our will. But what if I told you that the very thing we fight against, the inevitability of change, holds the key to a deeper kind of freedom? The ancient Stoics understood this paradox better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." At first glance, those words might sound passive, even defeatist, but they're actually an invitation to a radically different way of living, one that doesn't just endure impermanence but finds power in it. Impermanence isn't just a philosophical idea, it's the fabric of existence. Everything around us, from the seasons to our own lives, is in a constant state of flux. The Stoics didn't see this as something to fear or resist. Instead, they taught that recognizing and embracing this truth is the foundation of resilience, peace, and even joy. Think about it. How much energy do we waste trying to control the uncontrollable? How much suffering comes from clinging to what was instead of opening our hands to what is? The Stoic approach flips the script. It asks us to meet life's transience not with clenched fists but with curiosity and courage. This isn't about giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. It's about shifting our focus to what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, our responses, while letting go of the rest. When we do that, something remarkable happens. The weight of trying to force life into submission lifts. We start to see challenges not as threats but as opportunities to practice wisdom. We find strength in surrender. And most importantly, we discover that true freedom isn't about controlling every outcome, it's about finding peace amid the chaos. Over the course of this video, we'll explore how Stoic principles can help you cultivate this mindset, turning life's inevitable changes into a source of empowerment rather than anxiety. Because when you stop fighting the current, you learn how to flow with it, and that's where the real journey begins. We like to think we're the captains of our own ships, steering our lives exactly where we want them to go. But here's the uncomfortable truth: so much of what happens to us is completely outside our control. The Stoics called this the Dichotomy of Control, and it's one of their most powerful tools for finding peace in an unpredictable world. Imagine an archer drawing back their bow. They can control their stance, their aim, even the strength of their pull, but once that arrow leaves the string, the wind, a sudden movement of the target, even luck, none of that is up to them. Epictetus used this exact metaphor to teach his students a crucial lesson: focus on what you can influence and let go of the rest. Think about the last time you obsessed over an outcome, maybe a job interview, a difficult conversation, or even your child's choices. How much energy did you pour into trying to micromanage every detail, only to realize later how little of it actually depended on you? Modern life bombards us with the illusion that we can and should control everything. Social media convinces us that with the right habits, the right mindset, the right hustle, we can engineer perfect outcomes. But life doesn't work that way. A sudden illness, a layoff, a relationship ending, these aren't failures of control. They're reminders of how little control we ever really had. This isn't about passivity. The Stoics weren't telling us to shrug and give up. They were urging us to redirect our energy wisely. You can't control the weather, but you can carry an umbrella. You can't force someone to love you, but you can choose to act with kindness. The freedom comes in knowing the difference. So here's a challenge. Take a moment to list the things you've been trying to control lately. Now ask yourself, Which of these are truly yours to command? The weight that lifts when you stop carrying what was never your burden. That's the first taste of Stoic freedom. Amor fati, the love of fate. It sounds radical, almost counterintuitive. Why would anyone love the twists and turns life throws at us, especially the painful ones? Yet this idea, which Nietzsche later championed but the Stoics practiced centuries earlier, isn't about blind optimism or pretending hardship doesn't hurt. It's about a fundamental shift in perspective, seeing every event, even the unwelcome ones, as threads in a larger tapestry we're meant to learn from. Take Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers. When Emperor Claudius exiled him to Corsica, a barren island far from Rome's intellectual heart, he could have raged against his fate. Instead, he wrote letters describing how the isolation sharpened his mind and deepened his philosophy. What looked like punishment became his most fertile period of growth. This is the heart of amor fati, recognizing that resistance amplifies suffering while acceptance unlocks hidden gifts. Imagine two people caught in the same rainstorm. One curses the weather, hunches their shoulders, and misses the beauty of raindrops on leaves. The other lifts their face, laughs, and notices how the air smells fresher afterward. Both get wet, but only one finds joy in the experience. The Stoics would argue that life's storms, loss, failure, even betrayal, work the same way. We don't control the rain, but we choose whether to let it drench our spirits or wash us clearer. So how do we cultivate this mindset when life delivers a blow? Start small. Next time you face a delay, a traffic jam, a cancelled plan, pause and ask, what could this moment teach me? Maybe the extra time lets you listen to that podcast you've been saving or notice sunlight filtering through the trees. Journaling helps too. Try writing down one obstacle you're facing, then finish this sentence. This is helping me grow. By the answers might surprise you. That stressful project, it's stretching your patience. The argument with a friend, it's clarifying your boundaries. Amor fati doesn't erase pain, but it transforms it into fuel. And when you stop seeing life's imperfections as mistakes and start seeing them as teachers, something shifts. You stop waiting for perfect to begin living and realize you were already free. Here's the paradox of time. It's the one resource we all share equally, yet so many of us live like we're bankrupt. Seneca saw this clearly 2,000 years ago when he wrote on the shortness of life, a blistering critique of how we squander our days chasing what doesn't matter. His central question cuts deep. How much of your life have you actually lived? Not just endured, not just planned for, but truly inhabited. Most of our anxiety springs from this disconnect. We're haunted by versions of ourselves that no longer exist or versions that might never come to be. The past is a ghost, the future a mirage. The only place life happens is now. Consider how much mental energy we pour into rehearsing conversations that already happened or scripting ones that never will. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It's not morbid, it's liberating. When you stop treating the present like a waiting room for some imaginary, real life, you start noticing the extraordinary in the ordinary. The warmth of sunlight through a window, the way laughter loosens your shoulders, even discomfort, a cramped subway ride, a tedious chore becomes richer when you stop resisting it and simply let it be. Try this next time you catch yourself spiraling into what ifs or if onlys. Pause, feel your feet on the ground. Take 3 slow breaths, counting to 4 as you inhale, holding for 4, exhaling for 6. With each exhale, imagine releasing the mental clutter you've been carrying. This isn't about emptying your mind, it's about returning to it. The Stoics knew this secret. Presence isn't passive. It's the ultimate act of reclaiming your attention from the past's grip and the future's pull. Because here's the truth no one tells you: impermanence isn't just about loss. It's what makes this moment, this breath, irreplaceable. And when you stop missing your life by always looking elsewhere, you find something unexpected. You've been standing in the refuge you were searching for all along. Some people hear the word detachment and picture a cold, unfeeling monk who never laughs or cries. But Stoic detachment is something far more human and far more useful. Imagine your favorite vase slips from your hands and shatters on the floor. Epictetus would say it's natural to feel a pang of loss, maybe even sigh at the mess. What isn't helpful? Screaming at the universe, blaming yourself for hours, or pretending the vase was worthless to avoid the ache. True detachment lives in the middle. It lets you feel without being flooded, care without being crushed. This is where modern letting go trends often miss the mark. Minimalism isn't about emptying your life of meaning. It's about making space for what truly matters. The same goes for Stoic detachment. It's not a rejection of emotion, but a reorientation of energy. Think of it like pruning a garden. You cut away the dead branches not because you hate the plant, but because you love it enough to want it thriving. So what does this look like in practice? Start with emotional clutter. That grudge you've carried for years, does it serve you or just weigh you down? The anxiety over a promotion you didn't get, does replaying it change anything or just drain today's joy? Detachment asks you to notice these attachments, then gently question their cost. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Is this thought a tool or a burden? Here's the subtle shift. Detachment isn't about feeling less. It's about investing wisely. The Stoics grieved lost friends, celebrated good fortune, and felt anger at injustice, but they refused to let those emotions hijack their clarity. Your vase broke. Mourn it, then sweep it up. The pieces aren't your enemy. The belief that the world owes you unbroken vases is. And when you stop demanding perfection from life, you start seeing the beauty in what remains. What if the secret to facing life's uncertainties isn't just resilience but rehearsal? The Stoics practiced something called Premeditatio Malorum, Latin for the premeditation of evils, a mental exercise that might sound grim at first, but is actually one of the most freeing tools they left us. Picture a Roman general the night before battle. While his soldiers bragged about victory, he'd walk through camp visualizing everything that could go wrong: broken formations, surprise attacks, even his own death. This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. By imagining the worst, he stripped fear of its power. If defeat came, he'd already faced it in his mind and crafted a response. If victory came, it was sweeter for having weighed the cost. We do a watered-down version of this all the time without realizing it, ever saved for an emergency fund. That's Premeditatio Malorum in action, acknowledging that jobs vanish or cars break down, then building a buffer so those blows don't crush you. The difference is, we often approach these preparations with dread, as if planning for hardship invites it. The Stoics flipped that script. They saw negative visualization as a way to inoculate themselves against shock and gratitude. By mentally losing what they loved, their health, their homes, even their loved ones, they didn't grow callous. They woke up each morning astonished these gifts were still theirs. Here's your challenge. Pick one comfort you rely on: your phone, your morning coffee, a person you love, and spend 5 minutes imagining life without it. Not as a morbid daydream, but as a clarity exercise. How would you adapt? What strengths would you discover? Notice the tension in your chest as you do this. That's the resistance we're training against. The goal isn't to live in fear of loss, but to dissolve the illusion that anything is permanent. Because here's the paradox: when you stop taking things for granted, you stop fearing their absence. And that's when you realize how much you already have. Heraclitus wasn't wrong when he said no man steps in the same river twice, not just because the water keeps flowing, but because we're changing too. That's the quiet truth beneath all our resistance to impermanence. It's not just the world that shifts, we do. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself about this constantly. One moment he'd be reflecting on the fleeting nature of fame, the next he'd catch himself fretting over a minor slight. His remedy, a simple, jarring question: what if this were your last hour? Not to incite panic, but to sharpen focus. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the waves crashing below. Suddenly, the petty grievances, the wasted hours, the things you've been postponing, they all snap into crystal clarity. That's the gift impermanence offers when we stop running from it, a lens to see what actually matters. Think of the seasons. Spring doesn't begrudge winter for ending, and autumn doesn't resent the coming frost. Each phase has its purpose. The decay feeds the bloom. Aging works the same way. We mourn the smooth skin of our 20s, but would we trade it for the depth of insight we've earned by 50? The wrinkles around your eyes aren't just marks of time, they're maps of laughter, worry, and survival. The Stoics didn't just tolerate this cycle, they revered it. Seneca wrote letters to his younger self not with regret, but with gratitude for the naivety that taught him resilience. Every loss, every ending carries an invitation. What will you learn from me? So here's an exercise. Grab a notebook and finish this sentence. The hardest goodbye I've ever said taught me maybe it was a job that defined you, a relationship that shaped you, or even a version of yourself you outgrew. Sit with that lesson for a moment, not the pain, the wisdom, because impermanence isn't just a force we endure. It's the strictest and kindest teacher we'll ever have. It strips away the unnecessary, leaving only what's real. And when we stop arguing with its curriculum, we start seeing the pattern. Every ending is a seam, not a tear woven into the fabric of who we're becoming. Grief is not the enemy of Stoicism, it's the proving ground. When Seneca's dear friend Lucilius lost someone he loved, Seneca didn't tell him to suppress his sorrow or think positive. Instead, he wrote, "Let your tears flow, but let them also cease. Let your sighs be deep, but let them end." There's a profound honesty in this approach. The Stoics never denied pain. They denied the lie that suffering should last forever. Imagine holding a handful of snow, clench your fist, and it turns to water, slipping through your fingers. Hold it gently, and you can study its intricate shape before it melts naturally. That's the Stoic art of grieving, not freezing the moment in resistance, but letting it transform you as it passes. Modern culture sends us mixed messages about loss. We're told to get over it quickly, or worse, to romanticize our pain as proof of love. Neither approach honors what grief truly is, a reflection of how deeply something mattered. The Stoics understood this. When Seneca mourned his own friend, he didn't wallow in endless lament. He lit a lamp in the man's honor, wrote about his virtues, and then critically allowed life to move forward. This wasn't coldness, it was reverence. By ritualizing the farewell, he created space to both feel the loss and integrate its lessons. Here's where many of us get stuck. We confuse holding on with holding dear. One keeps us chained to the past, the other lets us carry wisdom into the future. Try this. Think of a loss you've struggled to release. Now design a small ritual to honor it, a letter you burn under the moonlight, a walk to a place that reminds you of what was, even planting something that grows as your sorrow shifts. The key is intentionality. You're not erasing the memory, you're returning it to the stream of time. The Stoic distinction between pain and suffering is vital here. Pain is inevitable when we lose what we love. Suffering, that's what happens when we insist the universe shouldn't have allowed the loss in the first place. The first acknowledges reality, the second wages war against it. Notice how nature handles endings. Trees don't refuse to drop their leaves in autumn because they're attached. They let go when the season demands, knowing new growth requires the space. Your grief deserves the same respect, felt fully, then released when its work is done. Because healing isn't forgetting. It's making peace with the truth that love outlasts even the sharpest goodbye. Ever notice how two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different stories? One person sits in traffic fuming about wasted time, while another sees it as a rare pocket of solitude to listen to an audiobook. Epictetus, the former slave turned Stoic teacher, had a name for this phenomenon: impressions. He taught that nothing in life is inherently good or bad until we assign it meaning. The traffic jam isn't the problem. The story we tell ourselves about it is. Think of your mind like a courtroom. Events enter as neutral facts. The train is delayed, the coffee spilled, the meeting ran long. Then, like an overzealous judge, we rush to deliver verdicts. This is terrible. This ruins everything, but what if we paused before slamming the gavel? Epictetus called this the discipline of assent, the power to withhold judgment long enough to choose our response. It's not about denying reality, it's about refusing to let knee-jerk reactions dictate our peace. Here's a practical way to try this today. Pick one minor annoyance that reliably triggers you, maybe a coworker's loud typing or a slow elevator. Next time it happens, catch yourself mid-complaint and ask, what if I'm wrong about what this means? The typing isn't annoying, it's just sound waves hitting your eardrums. The elevator isn't frustrating, it's a metal box moving at a fixed speed. The shift happens when you realize you've been the one holding the gavel all along. This isn't about pretending discomfort doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that most of our suffering comes from the labels we paste onto raw experience. A rainy day isn't gloomy unless you believe sunshine is mandatory for joy. A cancelled plan isn't disappointing unless you've decided your happiness depends on it. The Stoics weren't suggesting we become emotionless robots. They were offering us a superpower, the ability to separate what happens from the stories we spin around it. Because when you stop conflating events with their interpretations, you discover something radical. You're freer than you thought. Marcus Aurelius had a habit of climbing mental mountains. Late at night, in the quiet of his campaign tent, he'd practice what he called the view from above, imagining himself rising high above the earth until cities became specks, armies turned into ants, and his worries shrank to their true size. Picture standing on a cliff at dusk, watching waves crash against rocks far below. From that distance, the chaos looks almost graceful, part of a pattern too vast to grasp from shore. That's the cosmic perspective in action. It's not about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them within the grand sweep of time and space. Consider a disagreement that felt world-ending last year. Can you even recall the details now? The Stoics loved this question. Will this matter in a century? Not to minimize present pain, but to recalibrate our sense of scale. The argument that kept you awake, the rejection that stung, like footprints in sand, most are washed away by the next tide. Even monumental events, wars, plagues, empires eventually fade into history books. This isn't nihilism, it's liberation. When you zoom out far enough, you start noticing what endures, not the fleeting dramas, but the timeless truths about human courage, love, and resilience. Here's a thought experiment. Next time you're spiraling over a problem, try this. Visualize Earth as a pale blue dot in space, just as Voyager saw it from the edge of our solar system. On that speck, there's a continent. On that continent, a city. In that city, a room where you're sitting with this worry. Suddenly, the weight shifts. The bills, the gossip, the setbacks, they haven't vanished, but they've found their proper proportion. Astronauts call this the overview effect, a profound shift in awareness that comes from seeing our planet suspended in darkness. You don't need a spaceship to access it, you just need the courage to step back. The irony, this perspective doesn't make life feel smaller, it makes your role feel more significant. When Marcus wrote, "Think of the universe as one living being," he was pointing to a paradox. The tinier we see ourselves in the cosmic scale, the more connected we become to everything. Your anger at the driver who cut you off shrinks, but so does your loneliness. Your fear of failure dims, but so does the illusion that you're navigating this life alone. Because from high enough up, all our struggles start to look like what they really are. Not interruptions of some perfect plan, but threads in a tapestry we're all weaving together. So tonight, before sleep, try rising above the day's noise. Picture your concerns floating past like clouds. Watch them dissipate against the backdrop of stars that have outlasted civilizations. And ask yourself, what's left when the small stuff burns away? That's where you'll find what's worth carrying into tomorrow. Cato the Younger was known for walking through Rome's streets in a threadbare cloak, deliberately choosing discomfort when he could have worn the finest wool. His contemporaries called it eccentric, the Stoics called it wisdom. There's a profound lesson in this simple act, one that runs counter to everything our comfort-obsessed culture teaches. We spend billions on ergonomic chairs, temperature-controlled homes, and apps that deliver food in minutes, yet we've never been more fragile when life inevitably shakes us. The Stoics practiced something radical, voluntary discomfort, the art of deliberately embracing small hardships to inoculate ourselves against life's larger blows. Picture this, it's winter and you're about to step into a hot shower. Instead, you turn the knob to cold. For 30 seconds, your body screams in protest, then something shifts. The shock fades, your breathing steadies, you realize you're still standing, still capable, still alive. That's voluntary discomfort in its simplest form. It's not about punishing yourself, it's about proving to your mind that discomfort won't break you. Modern science backs this up. Studies on cold exposure show it reduces inflammation, builds resilience to stress, and even rewires our response to adversity. The Navy SEAL didn't invent this idea. They inherited it from philosophers who trained their minds by first training their bodies. But why does this work? Because every time you choose discomfort, skipping the elevator for stairs, fasting until noon, or leaving your phone behind on a walk, you're rehearsing for life's involuntary hardships. When your flight gets cancelled or your project fails, your brain doesn't panic. It remembers, I've faced worse by choice. This is just another challenge to meet. Seneca put it bluntly, set aside a certain number of days to eat only the cheapest food, wear rough clothing. Then ask yourself, is this really what I used to dread? Here's the twist, voluntary discomfort doesn't just harden you, it softens your grip on luxury. Cato's cloak wasn't about poverty, it was about freedom. The less you need comfort, the less power it has over you. Think of the billionaire who still flies coach or the celebrity who cleans their own dishes. These aren't quirks, they're conscious defenses against entitlement, because comfort, when expected, becomes a cage. Your challenge, pick one comfort to surrender today. Take the colder shower, walk without headphones, drink your coffee black. Notice the resistance, that voice insisting you deserve the easier option, and meet it with curiosity. That friction is where growth lives, because true resilience isn't forged in crisis. It's built in these small, daily acts of choosing difficulty over convenience. And when life inevitably hands you real storms, you'll stand unshaken, knowing you've weathered worse by design. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a line in his private journal that would echo through centuries. The impediment becomes the way. At first glance, it reads like a cryptic riddle, but unpack it, and you'll find one of Stoicism's most explosive ideas, the art of turning obstacles into fuel. Think of a blacksmith forging a sword. The hammer isn't destroying the metal, it's shaping it into something sharper, stronger. The Stoics saw adversity the same way. Every setback, every limitation, even every failure wasn't just something to endure. It was raw material waiting to be transformed. Consider the athlete who tears a ligament mid-season. The injury isn't just a physical blow, it's a mental earthquake. The training regimen they've relied on, useless. The identity they've built as a competitor, shaken. But here's where the anti-fragile mindset kicks in. Instead of fixating on lost games, they dive into physiotherapy with the same intensity they once reserved for drills. They study game footage with fresh eyes, noticing patterns they'd missed when they were moving at full speed. By the time they return to the field, they're not just recovered, they're upgraded. The obstacle didn't block their path, it became the path. This isn't just motivational fluff. Modern psychology calls it post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where people emerge from hardship with greater resilience, deeper relationships, or newfound purpose. The Stoics were ahead of the curve. They recognized that fragility shatters under pressure, resilience withstands it, but anti-fragility thrives because of it. Like a muscle that only grows when stressed, we're designed to adapt when life pushes back. So here's a challenge. Identify one obstacle in your life right now, a rejection, a limitation, even a fear. Now ask, how could this very thing be sculpting me? That project that fell through, could it be redirecting you to something more aligned? That difficult person in your orbit, might they be teaching you patience or boundaries? The key isn't to pretend the obstacle doesn't hurt. It's to refuse to let the pain go to waste. Because when you stop seeing barriers as stop signs and start seeing them as detour markers, something shifts. You realize the universe wasn't blocking your way, it was building your legs for the climb. There's a voice in all of us that loves to whisper, "This isn't fair." Maybe it pipes up when your boss takes credit for your idea, or when you're stuck cleaning up someone else's mess again. At first glance, that voice seems justified, even righteous. But here's the uncomfortable truth Epictetus exposed 2,000 years ago. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Every time we blame traffic for our bad mood, or a rude coworker for our ruined day, we hand over our power like a ransom. The Stoics called this the slavery of externals, the belief that our peace depends on circumstances behaving perfectly, and it's a trap disguised as truth. Let's dissect a common complaint. My partner never listens to me. On the surface, it's a valid frustration, but beneath it lurks a dangerous assumption that your emotional state is determined by someone else's actions. Now rewrite that script with Stoic ownership. I haven't found a way to communicate my needs effectively yet. Feel the shift. The first version paints you as a passive victim. The second puts the reins back in your hands. This isn't about excusing poor behavior. It's about recognizing that your agency begins where their choices end. Try this today. Carry a notepad and tally every time you hear yourself blaming an external factor. The weather, the government, your noisy neighbors. Then, before bed, pick one grievance and reframe it as a challenge to your creativity or patience. That delayed flight isn't ruining your trip, it's testing your ability to adapt. The critical friend isn't draining you, they're revealing where your boundaries need reinforcing. Victimhood thrives in passive language, ownership speaks in verbs, "I'll adjust." I'll respond, I'll grow. The irony, when you stop rehearsing grievances, you start noticing how often life actually cooperates. The train arrives on time. A stranger holds the door, the sun breaks through the clouds. These moments were always there, you were just too busy narrating your complaints to see them. Epictetus warned his students, "You become what you give your attention to." So here's the real choice. Do you want to be the hero of your story or the captive of your excuses? The answer rewrites everything. Death isn't life's opposite, it's life's most honest advisor. That's the heart of memento mori, the ancient Stoic practice of remembering our mortality, not as a morbid fixation, but as a clarifying lens. Seneca put it bluntly, "You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire." We delay dreams for someday. We tolerate soul-draining jobs for security. We mute our passions for approval, but what if you flip the script? What if, instead of pretending time is limitless, you let its finitude sharpen your choices? Take bucket lists. Most people treat them like wishful thinking. Maybe one day I'll skydive or learn Italian. The Stoic approach is different. It asks, why not now? Not as reckless abandon, but as urgent priority. When journalist John Zerzan interviewed centenarians about their regrets, one pattern emerged: "I wish I'd risked more discomfort for what mattered." Not failure haunted them, unlived lives did. This isn't about ticking off adrenaline rushes. It's about recognizing that someday is a myth, that trip you've postponed, the apology you've rehearsed but never spoken, the art you're not ready to share. Death whispers, do it while you still can. Legacy questions cut even deeper. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as private reflections, never intending publication. Yet centuries later, his words still guide millions. Why? Because he lived by a simple rule: waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Legacy isn't about crafting your obituary. It's about aligning your days with your values so tightly that when you're gone, the echoes speak for themselves. Think of a teacher who changed your life with one offhand comment, or a grandparent whose quiet integrity still shapes your choices. They weren't chasing immortality, they were fully present in their fleeting moments. So here's a thought experiment. If you learned today that you had 10 guaranteed years left, what would you stop tolerating immediately? That toxic relationship, the job that numbs your soul. Now ask, what's stopping you from making those changes now? The answer isn't time, it's fear. Fear of instability, fear of judgment, fear of realizing you were wrong. But here's the secret Seneca knew. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Try this tonight. Light a candle and watch the wax drip. Notice how the flame burns steadily until it doesn't. Then ask, what's worth my fleeting sparks? Not in despair, in focus. Because when you stop pretending you'll live forever, you start living like today's the only guarantee. And that's when the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The warmth of your sheets, the sound of a loved one's laugh, even the weight of a challenge that's shaping you. Mortality isn't a threat, it's the compass that points you true north. And the irony, the more you accept life's brevity, the more expansive it feels. Scrolling through endless feeds of vacation photos, promotions, and curated happiness, it's easy to feel like life is passing you by. That pang in your chest when you see someone's highlight reel. The Stoics called it propathia, the first involuntary flicker of envy before we feed it with stories. Marcus Aurelius faced this too, though his social media was the gossip of Roman nobility. His remedy, a simple reminder: you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Those likes, follows, and comments aren't judgments on your worth. They're just data points we've been conditioned to crave. Think of it like walking through a marketplace. Every stall shouts for your attention: sparkling jewels, exotic fruits, silks that promise to make you special. But what if you walked through with your pockets already full? That's what Stoic detachment does in the digital age. It's not about deleting your accounts or pretending envy doesn't sting. It's about recognizing that the game is rigged. No amount of external validation can fill the hole meant for self-approval. Try this experiment for 1 week. Turn off all notifications and resist checking post-analytics. Notice the anxiety that arises, the itch to know if you're winning. That discomfort is the addiction talking. Now redirect that energy inward. Instead of tallying likes, journal about what you found meaningful today. Did the sunset move you? Did a conversation spark curiosity? Those are your real metrics. Marcus wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Whose validation have you been overvaluing? The boss who barely knows you? The acquaintance whose life looks perfect online? Strip away the layers and you'll find a startling truth. The audience you're performing for is often just a mirror of your own insecurities. Here's the freedom in Stoic social media use. You get to choose your own scoreboard. Maybe it's creating without posting. Maybe it's engaging only when inspired, not obligated. The digital world becomes lighter when you stop treating it as a courtroom and start seeing it as a tool, one you can pick up or set down without guilt. Because the most radical act of defiance isn't logging off, it's logging on unchanged by the noise. Imagine standing in a grocery store aisle, staring at 20 varieties of olive oil. Cold-pressed, organic, infused with herbs, each bottle promising something the others lack. Your hand hovers, torn between simple necessity and the seductive whisper of maybe this one will make me happier. This is the crossroads where Stoic wisdom meets modern life, the discipline of desire. Epictetus, often misunderstood as a pleasure seeker, actually taught something radical. That true satisfaction comes not from accumulating more, but from redefining what enough feels like. He didn't say pleasure was bad. He said unchecked craving turns pleasure into slavery. Think of your phone. How many times have you upgraded, chasing the latest model, only to find the thrill fading within weeks? The Stoics would call this prolepsis, a false belief that external things can fulfill internal needs. It's not the olive oil or the phone that's the problem. It's the story we attach to them. If I have this, I'll finally be content. But contentment isn't a product, it's a practice. Seneca lived in luxury but practiced poverty regularly, reminding himself, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Here's where modern minimalism misses the mark. It's not about owning fewer things, it's about wanting fewer things. A closet with 10 tailored shirts isn't minimalist if you still covet an 11th. The discipline of desire asks a sharper question. What do I truly need to thrive, not survive, thrive? For Marcus Aurelius, it was a simple bowl of lentils and a roof against the rain. For you, it might mean recognizing that the third coffee today isn't energy, it's anxiety in a mug. Try this experiment. Pick one recurring desire, the afternoon snack you don't need but crave, the impulse buy that clutters your cart. Next time it arises, pause. Feel the tension in your body, the mental drumbeat of I want. Now, imagine stepping outside yourself and watching that urge like a scientist observing a phenomenon. It's not you, it's just a passing weather system in your mind. The Stoics called this hypolepsis, the power to withhold assent from cravings until they prove their worth. The irony, when you stop feeding desires, they shrink. That designer bag loses its luster. The extra slice of cake feels heavy, not tempting. And in that space, something unexpected grows, the quiet joy of sufficiency. Because freedom isn't having everything you want, it's wanting everything you already have. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, ask yourself, what did I truly lack today? The answer might surprise you. Anger burns hot but leaves nothing warm in its wake. That's the brutal truth Seneca confronts in On Anger, his searing examination of what he called a temporary madness. Picture a spark landing on dry grass. For a moment, the flames roar, consuming everything in their path. But when the fire dies, what remains? Only scorched earth. That's anger's legacy, a fleeting sense of power followed by lasting regret. Seneca, who served as tutor to the volatile Emperor Nero, knew this intimately. He watched how unchecked rage could topple empires and fracture ordinary lives. His remedy wasn't suppression, but something far more practical, the simple act of counting to 10 before reacting. This wasn't just ancient advice repackaged as self-help. Seneca understood the physiology of anger long before modern neuroscience confirmed it. When provoked, the amygdala hijacks the brain, flooding the body with adrenaline. Rational thought shuts down, words become weapons, but here's the catch. That chemical surge lasts only about 6 seconds. Count slowly to 10, and you've outlasted the storm. The key isn't to deny the anger, but to create space between the spark and the explosion. Think of it like a chess player who refuses to move until they've considered 3 responses. The pause isn't weakness, it's strategic strength. Consider 2 versions of the same argument. In the first, someone cut you off in traffic. Heat floods your chest. Your foot slams the accelerator, horns blare. Now imagine the alternate path. The same jerk cuts you off, but this time you exhale and count. By 8, you notice their toddler visible in the backseat. By 10, you've eased off the gas. The event didn't change. Your relationship to it did. Seneca's genius was recognizing that anger isn't about the external trigger. It's about the internal narrative we fuel in those critical seconds. Try this today. Pick a minor irritation, a snarky email, a spilled drink, and impose a 10-second rule. Feel the urge to react, then deliberately delay. In that space, ask, will this matter in 10 days? More often than not, you'll find the heat dissipating like steam from a kettle, because anger thrives on immediacy. It withers under scrutiny, and when you consistently choose measured response over heated reaction, something unexpected happens. You stop feeling like a puppet jerked around by other people's actions. The power to decide what deserves your fire, that's true control. Seneca's most chilling insight: anger punishes itself first. The person who seethes over an insult loses sleep while the offender remains oblivious. The parent who yells wakes up hoarse while the child remembers only the fear. Like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die, anger is a self-inflicted wound disguised as justice. But here's the alternative: channel that energy into action. The boss who undermines you, use the adrenaline to polish your resume. The politician who enraged you, redirect the fire into volunteering. Anger is energy. The question is whether you let it burn you or fuel you. Tonight, before bed, replay one moment that sparked irritation today. Now reimagine it with a 10-second pause. Notice how the script changes. That's the Stoic secret. Anger isn't erased by willpower, but outgrown by wisdom. And every time you choose the gap between trigger and response, you're not just avoiding regret, you're rewriting your instincts, because the opposite of anger isn't calmness. It's freedom. The universe operates with a hidden rhythm, a pattern the Stoics called logos, the rational principle weaving through all things. Picture a river carving a canyon over centuries. Each twist seems chaotic up close, but from above, the path reveals its purpose. Marcus Aurelius marveled at this in his Meditations, comparing society to a hive where every bee has its role, even if it can't see the full design. He wrote, "What doesn't benefit the hive doesn't benefit the bee." At first, that might sound like blind surrender, but there's a profound trust embedded in those words, an invitation to see setbacks not as disruptions, but as redirections. Take Sarah, a teacher who dreamed of becoming a principal. For years, she chased promotions, polishing her resume and volunteering for extra duties. Then came the rejection. A job she'd poured her heart into went to someone else. Devastated, she took a sabbatical, filling her days with long walks and overdue books. On one of those walks, she noticed kids gathering near a crumbling community center. On impulse, she started a free tutoring group under a tree. Within months, it grew into a thriving after-school program, one that connected her to a deeper joy than any title ever could. That no from the school board, it wasn't a closed door. It was the universe nudging her toward work that aligned with her gifts in ways she'd never planned. This isn't about sugarcoating hardship. It's about recognizing that life often writes straighter with crooked lines. Think of a time you faced a rejection that stung, a lost job, a failed relationship, a missed opportunity. Now fast forward, did that no eventually steer you toward something unexpected? Maybe the breakup freed you to rediscover passions you'd neglected. Maybe the layoff pushed you to build a business you'd never have risked otherwise. The Stoics didn't deny pain, they reframed its role. Like a navigator trusting the stars even in a storm, they believed every detour held its own coordinates. Here's the practice. Next time life veers off script, pause and ask, what if this isn't a setback but a reroute? Not as a platitude, but as a genuine exploration. Journal about a past disappointment and trace its ripple effects. You might uncover hidden threads, skills gained, resilience forged, doors opened precisely because another slammed shut. The Logos doesn't promise smooth sailing. It promises meaning in the currents, and when you stop fighting the drift, you start seeing the shore you couldn't have reached any other way. Socrates famously declared that true wisdom begins when we admit how little we know, an idea so radical his contemporaries put him to death for it. There's a reason that stings even today. We spend years building expertise, stacking credentials, polishing our opinions, only to have some ancient Greek philosopher suggest we'd be better off emptying our cups. The Zen masters called this Shoshin, the beginner's mind. It's not about dismissing hard-won knowledge. It's about recognizing how our assumptions can become blinders, filtering out possibilities we've decided aren't worth seeing. Take learning a new skill as an adult, say, playing piano. At first, your fingers stumble, the scales sound clumsy, but there's a curious freedom in being terrible, in having nowhere to go but up. Then something shifts. You master a few chords, memorize some theory, and suddenly you're no longer exploring, you're executing. That's when progress plateaus. The very knowledge that helped you improve now limits you. You play the same pieces the same way, convinced there's a right technique. This is the expert's trap, mistaking familiarity for mastery. The Stoics faced this too. Epictetus warned his students against becoming slaves to their own doctrines, parroting philosophy without questioning it. True growth, he argued, requires periodic unlearning. Imagine trying to pour tea into a cup already full. It spills over, wasted. That's what happens when we approach challenges convinced we already have the answers. But empty the cup, now there's room for something new. Here's the practice. Pick one area where you feel stuck, maybe a creative project, a relationship pattern, even your morning routine. Now tackle it with deliberate naivety. Ask absurdly basic questions. Why do we do it this way? What if the opposite were true? When Chef Jiro Ono trains sushi apprentices, he makes them spend months mastering rice before touching fish. It's not just about technique. It's about breaking their certainty that they know what good looks like. The magic happens when we trade the weight of expertise for the lightness of curiosity. That problem at work, instead of recycling old solutions, ask what a child would suggest. That argument with your partner, ditch the well-worn script and genuinely wonder, what don't I understand here? Beginner's mind isn't about erasing knowledge, it's about holding it loosely enough to spot when it's time to let go, because sometimes the barrier isn't lack of skill. It's the invisible ceiling of thinking you've already arrived. A shattered vase lies on the floor, sharp fragments scattered across the tiles. One person sees ruin, another sees mosaic material. The difference isn't in the event, it's in the lens. Epictetus nailed this centuries ago. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. That rejection letter, that harsh critique, that plan that crumbled, they're just ink on paper or words in air until we decide what they mean. And here's the liberating twist. If we're the ones assigning meaning, we can reassign it too. Take rejection. You pour your soul into an application, maybe for your dream job or an art residency, only to receive a generic, "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." The first interpretation writes itself, "I'm not good enough, but what if you rewrote the script? This wasn't the right fit, and now I'm free for something better aligned." Or, "This stings, but it's showing me where to grow." Same event, radically different emotional outcomes. The Stoics weren't suggesting we gaslight ourselves into false positivity. They were urging us to interrogate our knee-jerk narratives. Try this exercise, recall a recent disappointment. Now, imagine you're a neutral observer, a journalist reporting just the facts, no spin. The committee selected someone else, the relationship ended, the deal fell through, raw data. Now, draft 3 alternate headlines for that event. One compassionate, one curious, one even absurd. Local human experience's classic case of being alive. The goal isn't to erase pain, but to expose how much power we surrender when we confuse events with their interpretations. That co-worker who snaps at you. The first story says they hate me. The rewritten version, they're overwhelmed and it's not about me. The traffic jam that makes you late, catastrophe or chance to listen to that podcast you love. Epictetus compared our minds to a fortress. We can't control who knocks at the gate, but we decide who gets let in. Every moment hands us raw material. We're the editors, choosing which drafts get published in our mental library. So next time life hands you a story that cuts deep, pause. Ask, is this the only possible interpretation, or just the one I defaulted to? The pen is in your hand, and the most empowering freedom isn't controlling what happens. It's realizing you've been the author all along. Rituals give shape to the invisible. They turn abstract acceptance into something we can touch, light, or bury. The ancient Romans understood this deeply. Every February they celebrated Parentalia, a festival honoring ancestors not with somber mourning, but with offerings of wine and flowers at family tombs. This wasn't about clinging to the past, it was a sacred act of release, acknowledging what was gone while reaffirming their place in the living world. You don't need an ancestral tomb to practice this wisdom. Start simple. Take an old journal filled with outdated dreams or grievances and burn a single page in a fireproof bowl. Watch how the flames transform ink into ash, not to destroy the memory, but to loosen its grip on your present. Nature offers another powerful metaphor. Try planting seeds in soil mixed with the ashes of what you've released literally or symbolically. The Japanese practice of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, teaches that breaks become part of an object's history without defining its future. Apply this to your own life by taking something broken, a failed project, a painful memory, and ceremonially placing it in the earth before covering it with soil and new growth. The act isn't about forgetting, it's about composting the past into fuel for what's next. Here's a ritual I've found transformative. Write a letter to whatever you're struggling to release, a relationship, an old identity, even a regret. Be brutally honest, then fold it into a paper boat and set it adrift on water. As it sinks or sails away, visualize the weight dissolving. The Romans believed rivers carried messages to the underworld. Your version might just carry them to a quieter place in your mind. The key isn't the spectacle, it's the intentionality. Lighting a candle with the vow, "I release what no longer serves me," holds just as much power as grand gestures. What matters is creating a moment where your body confirms what your mind knows. That endings aren't failures but thresholds. And when you ritualize release, you're not erasing the past, you're making room for the next chapter to breathe. A blank canvas can be paralyzing. Give an artist unlimited colors, and they might spend hours agonizing over choices. Give them just 3 pigments, and suddenly their creativity ignites. Working within limits forces invention. The Stoics understood this paradox deeply. Constraints don't stifle freedom, they refine it. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, routinely practiced poverty, writing, "Set aside a certain number of days to eat only the cheapest food, wear rough clothing." Ask yourself, is this the condition I so feared? His luxury wasn't hypocrisy. It was a deliberate reminder that abundance without boundaries breeds dependency, while scarcity sharpens resourcefulness. Think of a haiku, 17 syllables, forcing precision where verbosity might ramble, or the way a musician discovers new riffs when barred from their favorite chord. Constraints act like guardrails on a mountain road. They don't prevent the journey, they keep you from veering off the cliff. The artist who limits their palette to earth tones learns to evoke sunlight with ochre and shadow with burnt umber. The writer who bans adjectives crafts sentences so lean they hum. Even nature obeys this rule. A river flows fastest when channeled between canyon walls. Modern life, though, treats limits like enemies. We chase infinite options, streaming services with endless scrolls, closets bursting with unworn clothes, calendars packed with trivial commitments. Yet the more we accumulate, the heavier it feels. Seneca saw this coming. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. The Stoic practice of voluntary constraints, fasting from noise, abstaining from shopping, even taking tech Sabbaths, isn't about deprivation. It's about reclaiming the space to think, create, and breathe. Here's your challenge. Pick one area of your life bloated by excess. Maybe it's your cluttered inbox, the 3 hours lost to social media each day, or the mental fatigue of decision-making about trivial things. Now impose a deliberate limit, 1 screen-free evening a week, a 10-item wardrobe for a month, or a 30-minute cap on email. Notice the friction at first, then the unexpected lightness. Like a vine pruned back in winter, you'll find new growth waiting beneath the cut, because freedom isn't the absence of limits, it's the wisdom to choose the ones that set you free. Marcus Aurelius once joked that humans are ridiculous creatures. We'll rage against a stubbed toe but shrug at the chaos of our own souls. He wasn't wrong. Picture this, a Roman senator in a toga, fuming because his imported wine arrived at room temperature, while outside his villa, an actual plague ravages the city. Fast forward 2,000 years, and not much has changed. We'll curse a slow Wi-Fi connection with the same intensity our ancestors reserved for barbarian invasions. There's something darkly funny about how small our biggest problems become when held up to the light of time. Take modern, first-world problems as Exhibit A. Someone tweets in all caps because their latte art collapsed. Another fumes when their smart fridge fails to reorder almond milk automatically. These aren't tragedies, they're sitcom material. The Stoics would have reveled in the absurdity. Epictetus, born a slave, literally laughed at wealthy Romans who claimed they were too busy for philosophy. Imagine him watching us today, scrolling through outrage cycles while standing in line for overpriced avocado toast. The lesson isn't to shame ourselves for petty frustrations. It's to recognize how often we're the punchline of our own jokes without realizing it. Here's where the magic happens when we start spotting these absurdities in real time. Your train gets delayed, and instead of simmering, you notice how dramatically you're sighing, like a Shakespearean actor facing betrayal. Your phone dies at 15%, and you catch yourself reacting as if it personally betrayed you. That awareness, that's the Stoic pause button. It doesn't erase the annoyance, but it strips it of its power to ruin your hour. Marcus called this the view from above, a zooming out until our crises shrink to their true size. Today's practice is simple but subversive. Pick one frustration and reframe it as satire. Stuck in traffic, narrate it like a nature documentary. Here we observe the urban Homo sapiens in its natural habitat, expressing dominance through horn honking. Spilled coffee on your shirt, pretend you're a tragic hero in an ancient play. Alas, the fates have spoken. This mortal shall not know unstained khakis. The goal isn't to mock genuine pain, but to expose how many of our daily emergencies are really just life's way of testing our sense of humor. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: laughter is the ultimate act of defiance against life's chaos. When you can chuckle at your own pettiness, you've already won. The traffic jam hasn't moved, the coffee stain remains, but you're no longer a hostage to the moment. You're the audience and the comedian, rewriting the script as you go. And that's a power no outage, no delay, no trivial annoyance can take from you. Joy in Stoicism isn't the flash of a firework, it's the steady warmth of a hearth. The Greeks called it eudaimonia, not just happiness, but flourishing, a deep-rooted contentment that weathers life's storms. Picture a climber reaching the summit after a grueling ascent. The Epicurean might focus on the cold beer waiting at base camp, the immediate pleasure of reward. But the Stoic, they're savoring something subtler, the quiet pride in their calloused hands, the clarity that comes from knowing what they're capable of enduring. That's the difference. One chases pleasure, the other cultivates meaning. Epicurus taught that happiness lies in minimizing pain and maximizing simple comforts: good food, loyal friends, freedom from worry. There's wisdom there, but the Stoics pushed further. They argued that joy isn't found by avoiding struggle, but by embracing it as the forge that shapes us. Think of a musician practicing scales until their fingers ache. The pleasure seeker quits when the discomfort sets in. The Stoic leans into the friction, knowing the dissonance today is what makes tomorrow's melody possible. Here's the paradox: some of our most profound moments of peace arrive because of hardship, not in spite of it. Remember a time you faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable: a health scare, a financial strain, a broken relationship. In the thick of it, the world felt heavy, but looking back, you might notice something unexpected. The fear faded, and what remained was a strange, hard-won clarity. The bills got paid, the body healed, the heart mended, and you emerged with a quieter, steadier appreciation for ordinary moments. The Stoics called this apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from being tossed by every passing storm. Consider the veteran who misses the intensity of combat but not the violence. What they're longing for isn't war itself, but the razor-sharp presence it demanded, the way every sunrise mattered when tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. Or the artist who thrives in the messy middle of a project, where the struggle to create becomes its own kind of fulfillment. These aren't contradictions. They're proof that joy and hardship can coexist, even depend on each other. So here's a question to carry today: when has difficulty unexpectedly gifted you with peace? Maybe it was losing a job that forced you to rediscover a forgotten passion, or an illness that taught you the value of a slow, unhurried morning. The Stoic path to joy isn't about numbing yourself to life's pains. It's about letting them carve you into someone who finds depth in the unlikeliest places. Because the sweetest water often comes from the deepest well. Morning light filters through your window, and before the day's demands rush in, you have a choice: to let the chaos dictate your rhythm or to anchor yourself in intention. The Stoics weren't just philosophers of grand ideas. They were architects of daily rituals, knowing that wisdom without practice is like a ship without a rudder. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, began each morning with journaling, not to chronicle events, but to realign his mind. His meditations weren't penned for posterity. They were private conversations with himself, a way to greet the day with clarity before the world's noise could intrude. Try this: keep a notebook by your bed. Before checking your phone, write one sentence answering, "What quality will I cultivate today?" Not a to-do list, but a to-be list: patience, courage, presence. It takes less than a minute, yet it sets a compass for the hours ahead. Evenings held equal weight for the Stoics. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-teacher, urged his students to end each day with an honest audit. Not a guilt-ridden tally of failures, but a clear-eyed review. Where did I act with virtue? Where did I let externals steer me? Imagine sitting with this question tonight. Did I live today as the person I aspire to become? No flinching, no excuses, just observation. The goal isn't self-judgment but course correction. Miss the mark, tomorrow's another chance. Nail it, note what worked. This practice isn't about perfection, it's about progression. Now, let's bridge ancient wisdom with a modern twist: the 3 acceptances. Before sleep, list 3 things from your day that resisted: a delayed flight, a harsh comment, a plan gone awry, and consciously release them. Not with resignation, but with the recognition that fighting what's already happened is like shouting at the rain. Write them down, then physically fold the paper or swipe the note away. The act isn't magical, it's neurological. You're training your brain to distinguish between what's worth carrying and what's better left in yesterday's ledger. Here's the challenge: pick one of these anchors: morning intention, evening audit, or nightly acceptances, and commit to it for 7 days. Don't overcomplicate it. The power isn't in the elaboration, it's in the repetition. Like a gardener watering a seedling, consistency is what roots the practice. Notice the subtle shifts. Maybe you'll catch yourself pausing mid-frustration, remembering your morning intention. Or perhaps you'll find sleep comes easier when you're not clutching the day's debris. The Stoics knew transformation isn't a single grand gesture. It's the accumulation of small, deliberate acts, each one a stitch in the fabric of a life lived with purpose. We began this journey clinging to the illusion of control, white-knuckling life, as if our grip could stop the tide. But look how far we've come. From the raw ache of resistance to the quiet power of acceptance, we've traced the same path the Stoics walked 2,000 years ago. Remember that shattered vase we talked about? At first, it symbolized loss. Now, it's something else entirely, a proof that brokenness can become art when we stop demanding perfection from the pieces. Acceptance gets a bad rap. Some hear it as surrender, as if embracing life's impermanence means lowering our standards or settling for less. But true acceptance is anything but passive. It's the ultimate act of empowerment, choosing to meet reality on its own terms, so we can respond with clarity instead of reacting from fear. Think of a sailor who stops cursing the wind and learns to adjust the sails instead. The storm hasn't changed, their relationship to it has. That's the alchemy of Stoic wisdom, transforming what we once resisted into the very current that carries us forward. Epictetus, the philosopher who knew true freedom despite spending half his life in chains, left us with these piercing words: "Freedom is the only worthy goal." Not freedom from hardship, but freedom within it, the kind that comes when we stop exhausting ourselves fighting what we can't control and start investing in what we can. Our perspective, our values, our next right step. This isn't resignation, it's liberation. The weight you've been carrying, it was never yours to bear. The future you've been straining to control, it was always an illusion. The only moment that's ever truly yours is this one, and in this moment you're free. So here's my challenge to you. Share your acceptance breakthrough in the comments. Maybe it's the grief you've learned to hold without drowning in, the setback that unexpectedly redirected you, or the daily annoyance you've reframed as a mindfulness drill. Your story might be the lifeline someone else needs, because the beautiful truth is this: we're all works in progress, learning to dance with impermanence instead of wrestling it to the ground. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply whisper, "This too," and feel the weight of the world loosen in our